Hi, everybody. First of all, Happy New Year. And isn't it starting off interestingly? It's been a while since I've done a video, and it's given me time to do some deep reflection. And so I thought I'd take, during this very historic week, take the time to speak to you about events that are unfolding in our nation and thus in the world. You know, I spent a great deal of time last year on the subject of transformation, certainly in my Phoenix series. And I want to continue that because what we are experiencing in this most historic week is, in my opinion, very much an ongoing theme of how transformation expresses itself in our world. These chaotic events that are making history are very much a part of this ongoing dynamic of transformation. And I wanted to offer perhaps a perspective on it that that I've been thinking about, and however it might appeal to you. This week is a theater of transformational events. And as it happens in the outside world, it impacts what happens in our inside world, because we're part of these events. We're the engine of these events. And they wouldn't be happening around us if something wasn't happening within us. And I think that is a way to view history in the making, that somehow this also speaks to you about what is going on inside of you, that all of this is happening around you. You're not separate and apart from all of this, including the pandemic, including all that is happening within the nation, within the United States, within Britain, within Brexit, within all of the nations of the world. We are these nations. We are these events. And so it's very risky to separate yourself and just be in the observational mode unless you learn how to enter the observational mode and stay in the event simultaneously. But I think before I get to that, I want to include 2020 as the year that I think historians will study for a very, very long time. It was an event, it was a year unlike so many years, that every now and again there's a year in history that includes certain events that change the course of history, that redirect humanity itself. Years that start a world war, years that introduce, 1945, that introduced nuclear weapons. They redirect humanity for the rest of the lifetime of humanity. It wasn't an ordinary year. It was a year that changed the world. And 2020 was a year that changed the world. In that year, in the year that we just came through, we had a pandemic erupt. The first global pandemic. And it sent all of us into a lockdown. The first lockdown. In the United States, the Black Lives Matter movement erupted and united and became a force to reckon with for the first time. This was a force that has been below the surface in fragments, but it finally united. And it was a long time coming. Another, I think, eruption that is going to take time to reckon with. And this is a little bit more complex, I think, for me to explain. The way I see it is that, this consciousness movement that we've spoken about now for decades and decades, consciousness is about the task of refining your capacity to discern truth. That's what it's about. It's about your capacity to discern what Buddha would call the illusions in your life, and to break through those illusions so that you can make conscious choices, so that you can discern what is truth from what is not truth within yourself, so that you can from the tiniest thing recognize, I am being seduced by a thought form that has no truth to it. I am addicted to something and I have to withdraw that addiction. I am, it's my anger that's causing this. That's the truth, and it's not them. These are the stages of becoming conscious, one perception at a time. It's not, to me, ironic that, people think consciousness is recycling and, becoming conscious of these endless, I need a healthy water bottle and I've got to walk. And that's baby consciousness. That's comfort consciousness. But it's not the hard work of the process of inner discernment that actually transforms you. Keeping your body thin or healthy or whatever is comfort consciousness. The deeper work of discernment is hard. It's a challenge because that's what changes your life. Changing your body is one thing. Changing your life is another. So it's not paradoxical to me at all, but quite expected that in this era of our needing to work on becoming conscious, we would confront the uprising of massive flows of the opposition, which is what was labeled fake news, by someone who becomes the iconic spokesperson for fake news. And the internet would be filled with one story after another, and out of it would emerge something like QAnon, with propaganda and not even propaganda, but garbage about people drinking baby's blood and such utter nonsense. But people believed it. People believed it. That QAnon would come out of this. That 2020 would be a year of massive psychic seduction. It was as if we were reaching an apex of some kind of psychic breakthrough that required not just an election, but an exorcism of this kind of massive darkness. Constantly lies being poured into the collective. When the irony of life, the irony of the journey of the spirit is truth. Truth versus an endless outpouring of lies and deception. Truth versus deception. Truth versus deception. And that characterized 2020. And then a massive pandemic in which, again, the healing of this requires the unity of a pandemic, everybody involved. the unity of people deciding together. We have to heal together. The message ever so clear, ever so clear. But then deciding we will turn even that into a spin. No, this has to do with personal freedom. Since when does illness have to do with a personal freedom that is an epidemic? So I'm going to segue to what I always segue to, either history or mysticism. I have been deeply influenced by the work of Teresa of Avila, as many of you know. And one of her great teachings, which has had a tremendous impact on me, is that she told her sisters, her nuns, that they were not entitled to anything, and that to even think about entitlement, to even think about it, was like getting a reptile in your head. Getting a reptile in your head. Because once a reptile gets in, it starts eating away at your thought forms. And it starts talking to you. You know, you're entitled to that. You're entitled to be first. You're entitled to this. You're entitled to that. And in my work as a medical intuitive, I can tell you for a fact that suffering for people, true suffering, is rooted in a few things. One, experiences of humiliation. And two, beliefs about being entitled. Entitled to, I was entitled to this inheritance. I was entitled to a happy marriage. I was entitled to, and the list goes on and on and on. I was entitled to this promotion. I was entitled. Entitlement means that somehow or other, the orchestration of life is all around you. That events have to play out to suit you. That somehow people, their path in life is all about taking care of you. Not their path in life is about their path in life, but rather whatever means to take care of you. That their jobs, their promotions, their progressions mean nothing if they don't, in fact, serve your life. This is the illusion of entitlement. You think we're entitled to have water turn on when we turn the spigots on in our house. No, we're not. We have to pay taxes to make sure that the whole municipality works. We're not entitled to it. We have to pay for it. We're not entitled to anybody's respect unless we respect them. We're not entitled to any. In my workshops, I'll say to people, what do you think you're entitled to? Do a list for me. Make it long and make it honest. They'll always say the respect of my children. You're not entitled to that. You have to, respect's a two-way street. You have to be respectful. They're independent human beings. How many people are shattered? How many women are shattered? I thought my marriage would go on forever. Where did that come from? That's a myth. That's one of those fairy tales you hooked into. Nothing is forever. Nothing. It's a blessing if it does, but, and this is where Teresa said, you're not entitled to anything. But if you look at the wonderful things that you have, most of them you had nothing to do with. To wit, if you look at someone who loves you, and look at them when they're not looking at you, and just look at them, and they really love you, and they really do think that they're in their heart, they believe deeply that because you're in their life, their life is much better, much richer, much more wonderful. You can't make that happen. You can't make someone love you like that. You know that if you ever had a crush on someone when you were a kid and they didn't feel the same way, there was nothing you could do to make that crush to make them have a crush on you. Nothing. No matter how you wore your hair, no matter what, it didn't matter. If they didn't have a crush on you, nothing. You're not entitled to someone responding with the same affection for you. It just can't happen. Teresa said, all the good things that you have, all those wonderful things, those are blessings that should prove to you that there's something greater than you that's operating in your life. You're not entitled to that. Now, a perspective I want to give you to think about is that what's happening to all of us, and thus to what we're witnessing in this world and in the United States, is a confrontation of entitlements, what people think they're entitled to. That those who think that the country is entitled to be white because of its history are having a lot of shaking up going inside of them. That's what we witnessed yesterday, January 6th, on the Capitol. A belief that, no, this country has to be ruled by white judges, white people, white laws. They are completely blind to the truth that this country is evolving into a holistic, a whole nation full of all of God's people. Every single race, every single religion, because that is what's called for as we move into an era of a global community, indeed a galactic community. This nonsense of skin as currency has got to stop, and it is. We are not entitled to that. There is no entitlement because of the bodies we've come in. This, what we are living through, this incredible historic era, is a rebalancing of power. And that rebalancing of power goes all the way down to our cell tissue, to our biology, to the level of the pandemic, to everything we are witnessing. And so it is up to every one of us to become conscious, to truly become conscious of how we see our power, of how we see our values, to truly become conscious and to start gutting ourselves at that incredible level of truth. And the smallest choices we make. This year, I'll continue my Phoenix series, and we'll go deep into ourselves, because that's what's called for. That's what's called for. It is a wonderful time. It is the right time to make this journey. And I believe we've made an incredible transition. We're living that transition. We are about to rise from the ashes. Thank you, everybody. And a blessed 2021 to all of us.